opportunity to make progress, but if I don't have a clear idea about where I'm going and what the goal of my day is, what to speak of my life, or if I don't have enthusiasm, then it's really hard to get something out of the day. And I've been thinking a lot lately about how valuable each day is, as we see that we have so much potential as human beings, but oftentimes when we get to the time when we have to leave the world, we may regret that we haven't been able to utilize our time and our energy as much as we had wanted to. And that is a conundrum. So there are very practical teachings throughout the wisdom literatures like the Bhagavad Gita, encouraging us to take a consistent approach, a balanced approach to life, and try to get the most out of every day. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just start off with a little bit of mantra meditation this morning, because it's a very quick way to bring one's mind to a point of focus. And in the mantra meditation, we're utilizing the power of spiritual sound. It's a vibration, a mantra that gets passed down over millennia, at least the mantras I'm going to introduce today. And they have a spiritual quality to them. So when we repeat the sound and listen to it, then our mind naturally becomes engaged and then also spiritualized. So the mind is constantly moving from one place to the next. It's referred to in the Bhagavad Gita as chanchal. Chanchal means restless. And those who take up the process of meditation in any of its forms soon notice that the mind has a way of eluding us, taking off on its own. And sometimes also in our daily work, we may notice that I plan to do one thing and then the mind takes me somewhere else instead, and I find I'm on a completely different track. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter, which is about meditation, Krishna says, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But for he or she whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means, such a person is assured of success. That is my opinion. So that's an optimistic note, because it's possible to control the mind and to be able to bridle the mind. Such a nice metaphor. It's like a horse. People and horses can have such lovely relationships. So we can have a lovely relationship with our mind. I was in contact with somebody on the East Coast who had been, for the last little while, maybe a year or two, seemingly tortured by his mind. And I introduced him to a colleague of mine to work with him a little bit more about how to control the mind. And I talked to him recently, and he felt great relief. This person who had just taken a consistent approach to noticing the mind a little bit more, and then employing some practices, some of which we'll talk about today, in detaching oneself from the turbulence of the mind and also learning to objectify it, or detaching by objectification. So let's try the mantra Nitai Gauranga. This is a mantra that has been used for hundreds of years and was passed down through the system of bhakti. The bhakti yogis chant this mantra. It opens the heart chakra and ushers in compassion. And it goes like this: Nitai Gauranga. And I will use my electric harmonium here to create a little tune to say the mantra, and I'll repeat it about 10 times. And then behind closed mics, you can follow along if you wish. And just try to get carried away by the mantra and see how you feel. Nitai Goranga, 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 Nitai Goranga. So that form of mantra is called kirtan. It's a kind of active meditation where you use music and then the mantra is blended with the melody. And the mind gets attracted to melody, doesn't it? Have you ever noticed that? And also rhythm. If there's some rhythm and there's some melody, there's a natural way in which the heart, the mind, we're sometimes feel compelled to listen. Once in a small town that I retreat to for a yoga retreat every year, except for last year, in India, there's sometimes groups of musicians along this little pathway that I frequent early in the mornings. And one day I was walking along and they had a real jam session going there. There was a tablaist and other percussionists and somebody playing a harmonium, which is the natural form of what I just played in electronic on my Casio. And I couldn't go past because the rhythm and the melody and then the mantra they were singing was so compelling that I had to sit down. And I didn't leave there for about an hour and a half. I just couldn't get up. I was transfixed, really. And it lifted me. So mantra means it lifts the mind. It pulls it up. If you ever needed a way to pull the mind up, you ever feel like I need somebody to pull me up? Well, the mantra is your friend. And if you learn this Nitai Gauranga mantra, you can practice it. I recommend early in the morning when you wake up as a regular daily part of your spiritual practice. And you'll start to notice that the mantra has this effect on you as well. And if you have some musical ability, you can add it to a tune. I've got lots of tunes that I can share with you if you're musically inclined, and you can use those as well. So the good start in the morning is one of the ways to make sure that the mind is bridled. And there's a system that I started using many years ago. Actually, the phrase always better service is something that I extracted from the back of a truck. It was delivering produce. About 20 years ago, I was driving down the 101 freeway going to teach a class, and I saw that phrase, always better serve, and I said, I'm keeping that. And I started using it in all types of organizational systems and in management contexts. And I found that it's a very powerful way to contextualize and organize. So let's look at a few ideas first, and then we'll take some reflections both on the mantra meditation and on the always better service, which is called ABS, the ABS principle. So the first is something my spiritual teacher said once, is that to make use of electricity, you must manage it properly. We have life. We're very powerful. We have a lot to give. However, just like electricity has a lot to give also, you have to manage it for it to be helpful, because electricity can be channeled in such a way that it can light things, power things, and be very helpful. Otherwise, you can just get electrocuted by it. So just remember that you're powerful, and yoga is a way of managing your energies and harnessing them and connecting them to our original conscious source. And when we do that, then we can do amazing things, seemingly amazing, by being a conduit of that energy. And the next is to always have a formula in your pocket. Someone maybe on this program recently said a picture is worth 1,000 words and a formula is worth 1,000 pictures, which points to the exalted position of a formula in the world. Everyone's looking for formulas. Once you have the right formula, you stick with it. And it's a combination. There's some synergy in there, things that work together that create an inordinate result. So the formula is powerful. Management of electricity is powerful. And consistency is king. And I love this statement about making progress in whatever field and whatever discipline you're attempting to make progress in. Consistency is king. It's more important than volume in the beginning. If you can do something regularly, then it starts to have a cumulative effect. And in those cases, progress is slower than we want, seemingly, but faster than we think. When there's consistency, one day you look up and you say, oh, actually, I've improved dramatically. I find this heartening because oftentimes I cannot muster more than a little, but I can be consistent. If I don't become overwhelmed by the idea that I have to do more and I'm not doing enough. Have you ever had that? Where you feel that because I'm not good enough, I can't write the way I want, I can't practice yoga the way I want, I can't engage in my service, whatever it may be, the way I want, or like other people are doing, therefore I won't do it at all. This is one of the big roadblocks to making progress in general. And if we can understand that just by being consistent, even in my lowly way, whatever way I can muster for that particular time, and just make sure I string together some kind of activity that is related to my practice, then I'll be successful. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Mayank. Okay, let's see a couple more, and we'll get the chat board going. Of course, you can write in anytime. And here it is, the formula I stole off the back of a truck 20 years ago. Always better service. I started calling it the ABS principle, and I use it wherever I go, whatever management situation I'm in. And I took this phrase from a teacher I knew, very exalted person I had met in India many years ago. He soon passed away. He was elderly when I met him. He said, "My religion is finding my faults and correcting them." I love that. And so there's a way in which, in this process of ABS, we're actually mining on one side our faults. Where are the gaps? where are places that I can do better in my life? These are extremely valuable. And let's talk about that. In the next slide, we see that there's two aspects to the ABS principle. But first, a word from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. So in the process of ABS, or always better service, the key word is service. When we're doing service generated by love, we'll naturally come to a place of satisfaction because that's our dharma. Service is our dharma. Dharma means that aspect of the living force, which is what we are. We're each an individual living force that you can't reduce any further. That's actually our nature, is service. Service is the activity then that puts us in the perfect situation where we feel aligned and where we feel ultimate satisfaction. A lot of people know that. Okay. Here are the two sides of the list that the ABS principle urges us to find. Before, during, and after you do any kind of activity, like if you have a project you're working on, before, during, and after, start to write down what's working well and where there's room for improvement. And these are the two lists that you accumulate as you're doing your spiritual practice, or whether you're doing a project at work. It works equally well. It's simple, but these two categories are what drive the ABS system. I like what Rosa Parks said, and that is knowing what must be done does away with fear. So one side is what worked well, on the other side, room for improvement. So you can imagine if you're doing this manually, you can either have two lists, or you can put a line down the middle of the page that you're writing on. And on one side, room for improvement, the other side, what worked well. I liked what Bruce Lee said, it is not a daily increase, but a daily decrease. Hack away at the inessentials. The things where there's room for improvement, there are gaps to fill or things to eliminate. Look, let's just come back into the room for a second and see if you could take a second, or more than a second, and just write down 3 things that you think there's room for improvement in your everyday activities. Or if you have a project you're working on, just do it as an exercise to see if you can think of 3 places where there's room for improvement in your spiritual practice or any project you're working on right now. JM, are you thinking hard?
Yeah. Trying to.
There's so many things you could think about. How's it going, Joshua? Okay. Three places where there's room for improvement in your life right now, or something that you're doing. It can be very general or specific. Mayank, you're kind of nodding and I see you're engaged. How's it going?
It's going good. I have a long list of things.
That's good. That's good, because there's another part to this that we're going to get to that shows what to do with the list. But in order to make improvements, it's vital to have a specific list. So you just went through the exercise just briefly. And just because I brought it up, then you moved into action and you started writing some things down, or at least thinking about it. Once you transfer the room for improvements to the paper or screen, wherever you're writing it down, then you have a very valuable list. Let's hear what Linda has to say.
Yeah, Linda just posted regarding that Bruce Lee comment. I have found in the last few years that it is not what I need to do, but what I need to stop doing in my life that will give me peace in my life. I have lots of essentials that I spend too much time on.
Ooh, nice one, Linda. We talked earlier this year about unnecessary necessities. And there's a way in which they can sort of pile up until I really look at them carefully and say, how much do I really need this? And eliminate it. And if I have them listed, then there's a way in which I can actually consciously deal with it. Otherwise, these types of unnecessary necessities tend to pile up and they become a general noise in my life. And I just feel overwhelmed. But I can segregate them out from my life. I can identify them and then very consciously eliminate them. For instance, let's just say there's a time wasting process going on in your life. Like, for instance, television. Let's say television, it grabs your attention and then you end up wasting a lot of time watching television. You could actually put that on your list, and there's a number of things that you can do to either regulate how long you watch television. One of them is to write down deliberately why you're watching it or what you want to get out of it before you do. Another is to see what it's like to not to have it at all. If you live in a third-story building, you can drop it out the window. So make sure nobody's there. I'm just kidding. But to one degree or another, you can actually decide, let me change my life. And how drastic that is, let's just say it gives you an extra half hour a day, or an extra hour, or 2 hours, or 3, or for some people 7. It becomes an acceptable bad habit after a while. And then I forget, it's chewing up a lot of my life force. I'm not managing my life energy very well. What else do we have there, Jam?
We have Mariam, who has provided a list. Number 1, look at all the waste, example, food, water, clothes, that I can be mindful about. Number 2, look at my mind spending unnecessary cycle instead of being mindful. And number 3 is need to better serve people around me and uplift their life.
Wow, what a good list. Thanks, Miriam.
And Mala says, be more consistent and not give up easily. Accept the past. Use your value dials to read the essentials.
Ooh, value dials. Nice. So if you're doing a project, have your list nearby. And every time you find something that is missing, like, okay, where's the key? I don't know where the key is. What did you do with it? I don't know. I thought you had it. Make a list. Okay, we can't find the key. You come across something else like, all right, there's not gas in the car. So next time, make sure that's done ahead of time. Now let's go back to the slides. So prioritize, put it in order. Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. You can make a priority list. However, I'll just make the point that in fixing the gaps, in filling the gaps rather, there's a way in which if you're not up to the task, start with the smaller things first. It doesn't really matter in one way. It's good to prioritize what's most important, but if you don't have the energy to do it, then start with whatever you can. And one of the ways to do that is on the next slide, which is to keep things visible. Make sure you have your list, because before the mind goes to sleep and wants to go off and waste time, then there's something exciting to attend to, and that's making some improvement. So Louisa Alcott, far away, there in the sunshine are my highest aspirations. I may not reach them, but I can look up and see their beauty, believe in them, and try to follow where they lead. And when we have an idea of what we're trying to improve in our life and we make it visible, then there's this sense that I'm progressing. And there's a formula that I learned years ago about management, and that is that when in an organization, the members perceive that things are getting better, they do more than they have to. When they perceive that things are staying about the same, they do just what they have to. And when they perceive that things are going down and getting worse, they jump ship and get out of the organization because they don't want to be part of it. So it's in the ABS system, I've noticed when there's tiny little improvements, sometimes people don't even know specifically what the improvements were, but they notice things are a little better than they were the last time. And it's noticeably a cause of encouragement for everybody who's involved in the family or in the group, in the organization, working on a project when those things are taking place. So if you keep the list visible, and let's go to the next slide, and you make 3 improvements each month. So this is not a huge number, but it's enough that you make changes. If you make 3 improvements to your life, to your team, to your project, to your spiritual practice every month, they can be tiny, tiny little things, but you'll start to notice it. And it becomes a source of inspiration that, okay, I have a whole month to make 3 improvements. What are they? And if you list them down, if you list them, and then you execute, fill the gap, even if it's tiny, 3 a month makes a huge difference. And or I would say enough of a distance so you'll feel encouraged and you get momentum from this. I love this picture. Shows 3 little holes in the stone. And my teacher used to use this phrase all the time: drops a day, wear stone away. See, my teacher wrote 80 books in about 13 years. And when asked, how did you do it? He said, drops a day, wear stone away. He said, every day I make sure I write something, even if it's a few sentences. And then there's a way in which that consistency over time can wear away my resistance and my feeling that I'm not good enough, I can't do it, it can't be done anyway. And even stone can be worn down by this consistent effort. And I like that, JM, you put that picture of 3 holes, because we're talking about 3 improvements every month. I don't know how you find these pictures, but it's pretty nice, amazing.
Thank you. It was arranged.
And then the principle of SNS, which is write down your smallest next steps. So one of the ways in which, in even making improvements, I get waylaid is I start thinking, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. So the way to overcome that is to figure out what's the tiniest next step you can take towards making the improvement. So somebody name a practical improvement that you need to make, and we'll discuss what's the tiniest step that you have to make next?
Start exercising.
Okay. So what's the tiniest next step you can make to start exercising?
Walk a little more and try to, gradual, if not go to the gym, at least, maybe start incrementally, adding a little more.
Walk a little more. That means you're already walking.
Try to capture it on my app, how many steps I walk. So
But you're
maybe,
already walking, right? Does that mean you're already walking because you said walk more?
yes, yeah.
So what does more mean?
Incremental, maybe 10%,
That's a lot.
or whatever is doable. I mean, goal is to, have much more improvement. But
Yeah, during the pandemic, I started walking 2 miles in the morning, 2 miles at night, and then at first I wasn't going that far, but then I took it small increments. I would just go a little further down the sidewalk, and I'll touch that sign and come back, and then with the smallest next step is find something that's a little bit further than the last time, like going to the gym. That's a big step. But the momentum of smallest next steps means that whatever tiny little incremental improvement you can make, it creates momentum going in that direction. And you can do more. Sometimes if I take a bigger step, it becomes harder to be consistent with it. So smaller steps. Nice that you're exercising too. Thank you very much for doing that. We need you around for years to come. Did anybody else have an improvement that you wrote down that there's a smallest next step for?
I can go next, yeah.
Yes, please.
So every day morning when I get up, I look at my cell phone and look at the messages and news and stuff. So I want to stop doing that and just get up, just like, go outside or not see the cell phone for like some time, because it influences my brain as soon as I get up. Or today the market is down, or like today this happened. So I think the incremental first step I thought was to keep my phone. I keep my phone for charging in the night. So keep my phone for charging in a different room than the room I sleep in.
That's an excellent idea, Amulya. In fact, I was reading recently about a study in how to overcome bad habits, and said, learn how to put things a little out of reach in places where it's a little harder to get to them. And that distance can make all the difference in the world. And just the intentionality of moving it into the other room, and perhaps even turning it off. So if you leave it on and charge it, then it's much easier to pick up and look at, and then go down the rabbit hole into the screen.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's nice. That's a good next step. And if you write it down on your list of what you can improve, where there's a gap, and improve it. And don't try to do too much at once, but make a small improvement. You start getting the momentum and a taste for it also, because like, wow, there's something better to do. It's really nice. Aditi, you have something I can see. I was thinking I could feel a lot of energy.
Well, not to say, but yeah, I was just thinking that what could be the next step to really just lessen the chatter in the mind? I mean, chanting has definitely helped, but and of course, I think listening to you live really has a very big impact. That I think I need to sort of keep making sure I'm more in my live videos and chats with you. And YouTube videos only make so much. They have only so much effect. I feel the live presence is very different. But yeah, I would definitely like more recommendations on
Oh, yeah.
how to use the chatter.
Okay. Well, one thing that's very helpful is in track and field, the start is really important. How you get off the blocks, for instance, 100 meters. It's how you line up in the blocks. Runners practice all the time how to get a good start. And so in yoga and bhakti yoga, getting a good start in the morning can make a huge difference. And so custom making a morning program for yourself that you can follow when you get started. I remember there was a sports team that used to script their first 10, it was a football team, and they used to script their first 10 plays. So now I'm giving sports stuff, but they would not have to get in a huddle and decide what the play was. They'd memorize the first 10 plays. So they'd come on the field, receive the ball, and then they knew what they were going to do for the first 10 plays. And they became famous for that. That was a technique they used. So it was already in their mind. And I think of that as the morning is a really important time to get the start in the day. And one of the first things to do that's really important is make your bed. In fact, that's something I learned living in the ashram for many years. You get up and you clean make sure it's neat and tidy. First thing. And recently I heard I think it was a 4 or 5 star general. He wrote a book about how to improve your life. And the first thing he said is make your bed. It organizes your mind. And he said, if nothing else goes well in your day, then at least you made your bed. And so there's steps you can take, mantras you can rely on when you first wake up in the morning. And if you script your first 3 to 10 plays of what you're going to do when you get up in the morning, before you touch anything else or look at anything else, then it gives you a really powerful start to your day. That's one thing that you can do. And that's a good place to start engineering things. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to call out, I have a 1 and a 3-year-old. So my mornings are a bit crazy, but I'm going to try to follow that advice.
It doesn't have to be extensive, even if they're tiny things. Remember, smallest next steps, SNS. The principle of the smallest next steps, you just need to fit the wedge in it so that it's you're the one who decided to do something. Because the mind's so powerful, it's like trying to fight the wind. So try to find the smallest little opening where you win something. Get a win out of it. Like, okay, I made the plan and I followed the plan. And that's one of the things my teacher used to say. Yogis become aware of the fact that they had a plan. Were they able to follow it? Or did the mind distract them in some other direction? So make a script that you can follow, even if it's a 1-minute script or 2-minute, to start with. Get an early win. Thanks. Nice points and good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Sheila on the Facebook, she echoed the same thing which you mentioned. She said, I learned if you don't make the bed, it will call us back to sleep.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, you make the bed as sort of final. It's like, okay, I'm done with this. And it helps to make that declarative statement. I'm moving on. Nice.
A few more on the Zoom chat. Mayank says, add climbing stairs. I think he wants to add more stairs.
What was that about climbing stairs?
Oh, that was the SNS for walking. If you want to add a little bit more exercise, start climbing a few stairs.
It's advice that's very prevalent these days. Take the stairs. Whenever I travel and there's escalators, elevators, I always take the stairs instead. In Japan, there's so many stairs, and you have lots of choices to take stairs or the escalator. And just those types, little incremental changes like that can make a big difference. I always take the stairs. Yeah, nice one.
few more on the Zoom chat. An anonymous one, a weak plan you can follow is better than a strong plan that you cannot follow.
Nice. It goes towards consistency. If you find out what it is that you can do consistently and get that idea of drops a day, wear the stone away. Don't become intimidated and think I have to do it like somebody else, or I have to do it bigger, otherwise it doesn't count. Just do what you can right now and be consistent with it over a longer period of time. And it'll start to have its effect. That little drop will wear a little impression on the stone, and then it becomes bigger and bigger, and then you get more and more encouraged.
Couple of more on Zoom. Neelat says, start writing more, be more consistent with pursuing my creative interest. These are some things he wants to work on, or she wants to work on.
Yes, Isaac Asimov, who's written over 500 books. He's still alive too. I found out his method, which is he writes many books at once. As he said, once he gets interested in writing about a different topic, he'll just put his energy into that. But he noted that if he just consistently writes something every day, then he gains momentum. I'm writing myself right now, and I'm finding that don't try to finish something, but just try to be in it and do a little bit every day, writing it. And after a while, you realize, oh, look, something might come out of this. We could use this for something. It hangs together. And that sort of holds true with most of the practices. Like if you're learning a language or an instrument, or you're getting your spiritual practice going, do the little bit that you can do right now, and just try to be absorbed in it, even if it's small. And then consistency will develop this kind of momentum where you'll realize, oh, I've developed. Yes.
Lakshmi says, a friend of mine currently runs on the treadmill for an hour a day, but he started by committing to just 5 minutes a day. I've noticed that he has been extremely consistent over the years.
Nice. That's the SNS, smallest next step.
Linda, do you want to say what you put down, or should I read it out?
Oh, sure, I can say it. I had a friend of mine. I tend to have anxiety because I want to accomplish 15 things in a day, and then I'm frustrated when I don't. And so he said, he told me to remember an acronym JOT, and it means just one thing. And he said, just focus on just getting one thing done a day. And then at the end of the day, tell yourself, I did that one thing and that's enough. And it really helped me because I feel better when I have a sense of progress and I feel content. I think, oh, I got some, because you're working all day and you lose sight of feeling like you made a dent in your own life outside of work. But it helps me because every so often around 4 o'clock, I'll go, oh, I got to get my one thing in. And
Nice.
I do it and I feel good. So I really am, what you're saying is really resonating with me because I as I've gotten older, I've learned that I can't accomplish 15 things in the day anymore. And it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, that's a really nice point. And it's a helpful point for me too, because I want to segue from what you said into the other half of the ABS principle. And that is what's working well. I mentioned filling in gaps and writing down where I need to make improvements. But the other side of the list is what's working well. And it's helpful to make a list of these things. What's working well in your life right now? What are you doing that's working? As human beings, we can get so absorbed in making things better and improving that we're always looking towards what doesn't work well yet and trying to improve it. And then there can be a gulf there that causes a lot of anxiety. So that's why the other side of the list is important also. So just take 1 minute and write down at least two things that are working well in your life right now. What's working well for you? What are you doing that works, even on the smallest level? What are you doing right? What are you able to be consistent at that's you feel is a worthy practice? And oftentimes when you start thinking about this, then the list can get longer and longer. You think, wow, actually, maybe I'm better than I thought I was. We've done a lot, actually, and we're doing a lot, and we don't even realize it sometimes. We just accept the status quo and think that, well, I should be better. But I don't realize that just being a functioning human being, or semi-functioning even, is a miracle. Just being able to, feed people in your family or yourself, or keep yourself upright and move from one place to the next. These are big deals. Let's see. How did that feel? Yes. Go ahead, Jan.
One is Deepak says not to check cell phones till 10 a.m. and meditation in the morning.
You're doing that? He's he can go on the heroes list, right?
Yes, of course. Yes, he says yes.
Yes. We'll put you on the list of heroes. Yes. Okay.
Linda says Thursday night event with this group. I think she's referring to Bhakti Circle. And Friday afternoon event with this group. I think that's Success Sadhana.
Nice. Thank you.
And Shruti says, can you recommend strategies to focus on your own self and discover your purpose instead of feeling disoriented when someone around you seems to succeed or accomplish much more in terms of career or even brave, adventurous things?
Yeah, well, the ultimate cure for that is to remember what the purpose of life is ultimately, because we're all living beings and we have an ultimate purpose. I'm reverting back to the wisdom literatures now, to the statement that I mentioned a few months ago. And it's in what's called the Vedanta Sutra, which is a list of statements that that guide us in the spiritual practice. So the first one is a Tato Brahma Jignasa, which means now that you're human, inquire about spirit, Brahman. And so when you start the process of self questioning, who am I, what's the purpose of life, and so forth, you'll feel far less behind in your endeavors, because it's very satisfying, the nature of spiritual inquiry and discovery. It has its own rewards, and every step along the way there you can feel some satisfaction. Of course, you can get competitive there too and see, oh, others are so far ahead of me, but I think it's very helpful always to get grounded in what's most important about my human life. And that is coming to understand the difference, first of all, between my body and myself. We are spiritual beings. We're not these bodies. We're only passing through. And if you have that as a foundational point, it tends to be grounding, and it tends to lead to enlightened engagement in other ways in your life, because things come into a clearer context, like, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Otherwise, we can just get overwhelmed.
Thanks. And I just posted, I think Aditi posted, she said, it seems like my kids are happy around me, even though I am constantly juggling. And I love my job as I've a very nice manager for the first time at my company.
Those are huge. Yeah, thinking about relationships is really important. And I mean, it's such a complex endeavor to keep a relationship, to raise kids, to have a spouse and all those things. And if there's some degree of balance that's going on there, that's like that's a huge thing that could be going right, that you can remember and not take for granted. Nice.
A few things on Facebook also coming up. Parastosh says daily sadhana, daily exercise, and eating healthy.
Ooh, three big ones.
Yeah, what a blessing, being able to breathe and walk to create and work. She likes that.
Yeah, just going into diet, I would just say it's not always so easy to improve your diet. You may have to do it in increments. First of all, the body gets used to a certain type of diet, and then you just try to change it drastically, and then the body can react. Also, people around you, sometimes they'll complain and say, wait a minute, you can't do that. This is what we eat. It's a good example of something that makes a huge difference in our lives, to make an improvement in diet, but then taking next steps, designing a way that to move into a better and better diet can make a huge difference in our overall well-being and our spiritual practice. Yes.
And Pavitra says, being a semi-functional human being is a miracle.
Yeah, being a semi-functioning human being is a miracle. It is. There's so many miracles that go on. In fact, it's something I'm writing about now in a section of a book about seeing how everything's a miracle that we do. We could take it for granted, but just the things that we do every day are miracles. And being somewhat functioning is or functional is miraculous as well. We've done a lot to get to that point, and we're doing a lot to maintain it. So, become aware of those things. Nice.
And Roman says on Facebook, become better at handling criticism.
Ooh, that's a good one. What's your smallest next step, Roman, on that one?
He's on Facebook. I hope he responds.
Yeah, he could answer back there. So, one thing is to plan for it and to remember, the mantra, I live to be corrected. And, prepare oneself for accepting criticism. Someone says, you should have done a little more like that. And instead of going, what are you talking about? Who do you think you are? Or at least in your mind, then think, well, I'm looking for improvement. And if you say it aloud, thank you, I live to be corrected, then you go off in a victorious march towards improvement. So getting prepared for that's a big thing.
Roman response was respect. That's his answer.
Nice. I want to go back to what Shruti said. Can you recommend strategies to focus on your own self and discover your purpose instead of feeling disoriented when someone around you seems to succeed or accomplish much more in terms of career or even brave, adventurous things? I just want to comment a little more on that. And someone had said, I think Linda said, such a good question, Shruti. But one thing is to also see the relative value of everything in life. There are so many accomplishments that someone can have. A lot of times people have, for instance, they'll have more money than we do, and would think, well, why don't I have more money? But then you'll see later they lose all their money overnight somehow. They're like, oh, what happened? I lost everything. These accomplishments in the world may not last, and they may be insignificant. They are insignificant to a degree. We should have a modicum of balance in life in order that we can be healthy and inquire. But in and of themselves, just making better career, more money, and things like that, or doing adventurous things, aren't necessarily those things to compare ourselves to others for. What's most important are the qualities we develop in ourselves that we talked about before, like how much patience have I developed? How much am I able to tolerate or forgive others? Those are metaphysical qualities that we can develop. And when we have those, it's easier to appreciate our own inner development and not compare ourselves to others externally. I agree, Linda. That was a good question Shruti asked. Thanks for bringing our attention to it. So we talked about the ABS principle, always better service. If you keep it in mind and think of the simple formula of keeping a list with two sides, write down those things that are working well and where there are gaps that you want to fill, and then make it your duty every month to fix at least 3 things. It can be physical things, like even in maintaining a building, if you think of I got to fix 3 things every month, instead of just letting them fester and stay the way they are, because like, how am I going to do that? But if they're on your list, you start improving them, you'll see you're moving in the right direction. And as far as spiritual practice goes, if you implement 3 little improvements in your sadhana, your bhakti sadhana every month, you'll notice that you're happier, things are going better, and you're starting to realize things that you never realized before. So try it out, and we'll be interested to hear how things go for you using ABS. So we're going to end with a little more mantra meditation, because this is a way to put bookends on any project or any meeting. Start with some transcendental vibration and end with it. And do you like the mantra, Nitai Gauranga? I need a few thumbs up. Okay, I got one from, thank you very much. Okay, we'll go out with a little Nitai Gauranga today. So I'll just sing it continuously for 10 mantras, and behind muted mics, just sing along with me, okay? Are you ready? Nitai Gauranga, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Thank you, everybody. The yogis high in the Himalayas come out of their caves every couple weeks to get some roots. And when they see each other on the bright paths, they wave with 2 hands and they say this phrase that means keep the transcendental vibration going, Hari Bol. So since we're in little caves right now, we could say goodbye by saying Hari Bol.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Thank you, everybody. See you soon.